Balmoral Castle had seen storms, the kind that rattle windows and the kind that rattle the royal family, but nothing like this. What began as a polished summer dinner, all silver cutlery and candlelight, ended in a moment so sharp, so personal, it cracked the crown itself. Camilla had always been a player of the game, not just a royal by marriage, but a survivor. She'd clawed her way through decades of scandal, whispers, and tabloid venom to become queen consort. Every smile, every wave, every carefully chosen word was part of her armor, but it only took one sentence, one slip of the tongue, to undo years of careful maneuvering. It wasn't meant for anyone else's ears. The words were private, sharp, and designed to cut Charles alone. "You're not even a king anymore, just William's puppet." A slap dressed as a whisper, but someone heard, and that someone ran straight to Prince William. By sunrise, Kensington Palace was thick with tension. William didn't pace, didn't raise his voice, he didn't have to. He sat in his study, a cup of tea cooling beside him, his eyes glacial. His father, the man he'd respected despite their differences, had been humiliated, and not by a journalist, not by an enemy, but by the very woman Charles had defended for decades. For William, this wasn't about royal protocol or press optics. This was about loyalty, and Camilla had crossed an unforgivable line. That afternoon, he summoned her. No formal notice, no polite delay, just a private room at Windsor Castle. She swept in, dressed to kill, every inch the queen. But William's gaze didn't flicker. "You insulted my father. You crossed a line," he said, his voice even, almost quiet. Camilla tried to mask it, claimed it was just a private conversation between husband and wife, but William wasn't bluffing. "There was a witness," he said flatly. "You called him weak, a marionette." The air shrank around them. Camilla left with her chin high, but the warning was written in William's stare. He wasn't the boy she'd once underestimated. He was the power behind the throne now. The next days were silent but devastating. Camilla's sister Annabelle, dismissed. Her most trusted aides, reassigned overnight. Charity events she'd been preparing for months, gone, and replaced with Catherine as the new shining face. Smiling, graceful, untouchable. The press releases didn't even mention Camilla's name. This was royal warfare. Not loud, not messy, but cold, surgical, and final. Furious, Camilla stormed into Clarence's house, demanding Charles put a stop to it. "You're the king! Stop your son from tearing me apart!" But Charles just sat there, his voice worn and low. "He's doing what he believes is right. What you said hurt not just me, but the crown." It hit her harder than William's words. Her husband, the man who'd once fought the world for her, wasn't going to shield her this time. She didn't cry, not yet, but something inside her cracked. She could feel it in the palace corridors, the way whispers hushed when she passed, the way doors closed before she reached them. One careless sentence had started an avalanche. But Camilla was no stranger to survival. If they wanted a war, she'd give them one. William wasn't waiting for her countermove. This wasn't revenge. In his mind, this was damage control. He saw the monarchy as a fragile house, and Camilla as a crack threatening the foundation. He had to act before it spread. He went straight to Charles. The Balmoral Library was heavy with silence when father and son faced each other. Charles looked smaller, not just in frame, but in presence, the weight of the crown bending him. William laid out the facts, the insult, the disrespect, the danger of letting it slide. "She's your wife," William said, "but she can't be the face of this family anymore." Charles didn't argue. He lowered his eyes, his fingers twitching on the desk as if searching for a reason to resist. None came. "I'll authorize it. Do what you must." The next morning, the royal seal went onto a document granting William full control over internal affairs. Translation? Camilla was finished. 3 days later, a closed-door meeting at Buckingham Palace gathered only the most trusted: Charles, Princess Anne, Catherine, and a handful of senior advisors. William stood at the head of the table, his voice cool and precise. "She undermined the king. She sowed division. She insulted the institution we protect." Then came the witness, Thomas Harrow, a veteran royal advisor. He recited Camilla's words, every syllable like a transcript, no spin, no doubt. Charles stayed silent, his jaw locked. Then Sir Edward Langley read a letter from the king himself, acknowledging the breach of trust and endorsing William's authority. Camilla sat rigid, her fingers knotted together. No one met her eyes, not even Charles. William delivered the final cut. "You are no longer fit to represent this family. You've lost the right to speak for the crown." Not a soul objected. That night, the palace sent out a neat little press release. Queen Camilla would be stepping back from public duties for personal health reasons. No fireworks, no scandal, just silence. Before sunrise, a black car left Clarence's house, taking Camilla north to her private estate in Northumberland. No cameras, no farewells, just her in the back seat, clutching the same pearl necklace she'd worn on the night everything fell apart. The estate was cold, not physically. The staff kept the fires burning, but in that deeper way where the quiet seeps into your bones. Days blurred. She sat by the window, staring at gray skies she once found calming, now suffocating. Her phone rarely buzzed. When it did, it wasn't Charles. Her children checked in sporadically. Tom sent short texts. Laura tried to comfort her, but even they could sense it. The palace had frozen her out, and the rest of the world followed. The press stayed polite. The statement was clean, clinical, but behind closed doors, everyone knew. William had won. She tried writing to Charles, letters that swung between pleading and fury. None were answered, not even by his staff. It was as if she'd been erased from his world. Meanwhile, the monarchy was reinventing itself. William and Catherine weren't just filling her role, they were scrubbing her influence from the record. Out went the stiff banquets. In came school visits, mental health initiatives, climate projects. Catherine took over all her charities, revitalizing them. The press loved it. Modern royals splashed across front pages. Even the palace website erased her name from events without explanation. Camilla refused to crumble. She dressed each morning as if cameras might appear. She walked the gardens at dawn, her pearls still clasped at her throat, not as decoration, but as armor. "They think I'm done," she whispered one foggy morning. "But I've come back from worse." Whether Charles would ever forgive her, whether the public would care, she didn't know. But somewhere in the silence of exile, she began plotting her next chapter. Because in her mind, history wasn't done with Queen Camilla, and neither, she vowed, was she. But here's the thing about exile. It doesn't just silence you. It forces you to sit with your own thoughts, and for someone like Camilla, that's dangerous. In the stillness of her estate, she replayed everything. The dinner at Balmoral, the look on William's face, Charles's silence. She told herself she'd been provoked, that her words had been nothing more than a frustrated wife speaking to her husband. But in the pit of her stomach, she knew that one line had detonated her entire position. The staff tiptoed around her, polite but distant. The florist, who used to deliver fresh arrangements twice a week, now came only once, and always with a quick, "Your Majesty," before vanishing. Even her dog seemed restless, picking up on her mood. But Camilla wasn't the kind to dissolve into self-pity. She started calling her oldest contacts, people who owed her favors. A few answered, but most gave polite excuses. The message was clear. Her name was now poison in the political and social circles she'd once dominated. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham Palace, William's influence tightened. Catherine was on every front page, shaking hands with schoolchildren, visiting hospitals, laughing with volunteers. Her warmth wasn't just genuine, it was strategic. The public adored her, and with every smiling photo, Camilla's shadow faded further. William knew exactly what he was doing. One evening, alone in her study, Camilla poured herself a large glass of wine and opened the newspaper. The front page wasn't about her exile, but it might as well have been. William and Catherine modernized the monarchy. Fresh faces for a new era. Every headline was a dagger. Not because they were lies, but because they made her look like the outdated relic she feared becoming. She set the paper down and stared at the fire. They thought she was finished, forgotten, done. A slow smile crept across her face. Oh, they had no idea. Camilla had outlasted scandals before, bigger ones than this. She'd been hated, mocked, and vilified, yet she was still standing. This time would be no different. Her plan began quietly. She reconnected with a handful of journalists she knew could be persuasive. Not the tabloids William and Catherine courted, but the seasoned royal reporters who understood how to plant seeds of doubt without leaving fingerprints. She began appearing in small, carefully chosen settings, private charity luncheons, quiet gatherings with aristocratic friends, the kind of events that never made headlines but always made it into whispered conversations. Her message was subtle. She wasn't gone, just resting. Meanwhile, whispers began reaching her from inside the palace. Not everyone was thrilled with William's new regime. Some senior aides found him too decisive, too quick to cut ties. A few even wondered aloud if he was consolidating too much power too soon. Camilla tucked these murmurs away like precious gems. They could be useful later. One night, as rain battered the estate windows, her phone finally lit up with a name she hadn't seen in weeks. Charles. Her heart thudded. She answered on the first ring. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Camilla, how are you?" It wasn't an apology, it wasn't a promise, but it was a crack in the wall William had built between them, and Camilla knew cracks could be widened. That brief phone call with Charles was like oxygen to a drowning woman. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was proof he hadn't erased her completely. And for Camilla, that was all the invitation she needed to start maneuvering again. She began writing him letters, not the desperate, angry ones from the first weeks of exile, but softer ones, reminders of shared memories, little jokes only they would understand, updates on the dogs. She made sure they carried warmth, not accusation. And slowly, she started getting replies, short, cautious ones, but replies nonetheless. It was enough to spark whispers among her staff that maybe, just maybe, the Queen's return wasn't impossible. Meanwhile, she worked her network like a seasoned general rebuilding her army, a sympathetic duchess here, an old family friend there. She hosted discreet dinners in the estate's drawing room where the wine flowed and conversation was carefully steered toward the direction of the monarchy. Camilla didn't insult William outright. She didn't need to. She simply let her guests draw their own conclusions about whether the young prince was moving too fast, cutting too deep. Those murmurs started trickling back to London. William, of course, heard them. He had eyes and ears in every drawing room worth caring about, but unlike before, he didn't strike immediately. He was too smart to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd rattled him. Instead, he doubled down on his own public image. More photo ops, more visible charity work. Catherine's schedule became relentless, her face plastered across the front pages weekly, and every smiling image was another brick in the wall shutting Camilla out. Camilla noticed, and she hated it. The final straw came when she saw an official palace portrait. Charles seated between William and Catherine, all three looking perfectly united, the embodiment of the future of the monarchy. There was no sign of her, not even in the background. She stared at that photograph for a long time, her jaw tight. Then she folded the newspaper, set it aside, and murmured to herself, "All right, William, you want a war? You've got one." From that moment, the exile became her battleground. She started aligning herself with influential figures outside the royal bubble. Political heavyweights, foreign dignitaries, wealthy philanthropists. People William couldn't control as easily. Every public word she spoke was measured, but every private conversation carried a subtext. She was still the queen, and the monarchy was bigger than one ambitious prince. Her allies were cautious, but they listened. And in the soft glow of her candlelit dinners, with pearls still around her neck like armor, Camilla began to rebuild what William had tried to burn. It wouldn't be quick, it wouldn't be easy, but if there was one thing she'd mastered over the decades, it was patience. And she had all the time in the world. Somewhere deep inside Buckingham Palace, William might have felt he'd won, but Camilla knew better. This wasn't the end, it was just the intermission. Just the intermission. Just...